mic. I know I saw yours. I was so excited.
Dink.
Good evening, everyone. So
Wow.
tonight we are coming together. This is all family, even though we just met today. But by the power of Robin, Rihanna, Fenty Beauty lip gloss and animal print shoes, we are going to have ourselves a good old time. And I know Manny recognized a lot of people, but I also want to take a moment to recognize Reverend Dr. Megan Rohr here on the front row, who graced our stage last year with Reverend Marvin K. White, and is now working with Marvin at Glide Church. And that was such a phenomenal talk about the intersection of queerness and spirituality. And to hear Marvin talking about how he found God up in the club, you know, like that's an R&B hit just waiting for the right DJ. Maybe Kevin Aviance can, remix that. So glad to see so many of you. I haven't been up on the stage in a little while, and when Joe, where is Joe? I told him this is Joe, y'all, just Joe. Joe is with HRC, and he shared his excitement, like literally. I imagined him like the phone almost dropping because he was so excited because Kelley was coming to town. And you were here before for, I believe, a dinner. Yeah. And we were throwing around ideas, and it didn't work out then. But then you were coming back, and Joe was like, Precious, this is happening. We've got to make this happen. We have a week, And it has come together beautifully, and it is such an honor.
Yes, look at this room. Yes.
So I always prepare lots of questions, but I have a feeling this is going to be like so easy. Or no, it won't be easy, but I think our rapport is already there because one of the things that I have witnessed seeing you here in the space is your ability to connect so intensely in such a short moment with the people you serve and the people who are helping you do your work. So tell us a little bit, how did you even come into organizing and into this role now?
Yeah. Okay, we're going to start with a big one. All right. And I have to admit, I was telling my team on the way over here that, like, my love language is, like, rallies. So so the experience of having a vulnerable conversation on stage, I feel like I'm having a leadership growth moment. So thank you. Thank you for joining me in my journey here. And I also want to say thank you to Precious. Like, we were talking earlier, and I feel like at 11:59 p.m., I experienced the intersection of my identities as Black History Month seeded into Women's History Month. And I think part of the reason I feel such a rapport with you is that as Black women, it is required that we are able to vision the future.
Absolutely.
It's a requirement. Because when I think about my family and my journey, it's at every point it has been Black women that pulled us through. Black women that ensured in the midst of our darkest moments, we knew that there was light. So when I think about how I came to this role, I really do feel like I'm part of a legacy of freedom fighters, Like, I'm John and Helen's granddaughter. I'm Patrice and Richard and TC's daughter. And that's fundamentally who I am. And, a big part of my my family story is that we were the first free Black family in a town called Muscatine, Iowa.
One more time.
Muscatine, Iowa. Now, I know y'all from California. Your first question is, where is Iowa, right? It's one of the squares in the middle, okay? But I spent a lot of summers I grew up in Chicago, but I would spend my summers in Iowa with the family. And I remember there was one summer that we went back to Iowa because my great aunt, who is the matriarch of our family, she was having her homegoing celebration. She passed at the age of 102. I know. I'm going to live forever. So take that, McCarthy, I'm going to outlast you if nothing else. But we went back to Des Moines for her homegoing because that's kind of the evolution of where our family is from. And I remember we were at the VFW in Des Moines. If you don't know about it, you better find out about it because it was going down. We were drinking wine coolers like they were going out of style.
Not the wine coolers.
We were doing every line dance imaginable. But as part of the homegoing, they told the story of my great aunt. And they said, at the age of 102 when she passed, in the course of her lifetime, she had sat and learned at the footsteps of people who were born into slavery. And that's just 2 generations before me. And throughout her life, she focused on things like getting us to places like Chicago where we could have economic opportunity and educational opportunity. She focused on things like making sure our family had running water inside the house and plumbing as a way to get to health equity. You know what I mean? She had done work to build one of the first black churches in Muscatine, Iowa, putting the cornerstone down herself. So for me, the reason that I do this work is I feel like, especially as a black woman, it is a requirement not only for us to see the future, but be so present in this moment and committed to doing everything that we can to make life just a little bit better. And I've always felt that that was my calling, and I got the opportunity through the Obama campaign, which I know some of y'all saw some of my Obama homies in the room, to do it professionally and to learn that it could be a career path. So that's where I got my start. I'm just so excited and really kind of honored to be able to do this work in a way that centers my communities and also that ensures, Imani said I'm the first black queer woman to lead the Human Rights Campaign, but I'll be damned if I'm the last, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know that there's going to be a trans woman or trans person to lead this organization next, right? Because our job is to open the door wider.
You sharing about your aunt really resonates. My grandmother is 101, and she's our family matriarch, and she will tell you about yourself.
Yes, she will.
The way she says "bless your heart" could mean so many things. So many things.
It cuts hard.
It's when she's disappointed,
Yes, yes.
But much like your aunt, my grandmother and my grandfather, they were from Malvern, Arkansas, which might rival Muscatine in terms of where the hell is it and why would anyone stay here. But they charted the path for our family, leaving and coming to Atlanta. And your idea of always having to be future focused just is so critical. And I think I mentioned earlier, yes, you are the first black woman to lead the HRC, but fundamentally, you're the first black mama. And being a black, not, yes, mother, but a mama, that brings with it unique awareness, unique concerns, unique joy. Talk a little bit about what that's like, because I understand this is a new thing, too, for HRC to be led by someone who's like, this is cute, but I have this 1-year-old that is demanding my time and attention.
Yes, my hours between 5:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. belong to that child, no matter what. And he's actually traveling with me, right? Like, I've come here with my kid in tow. He's going to bed at the hotel right now while I'm here with you, but it's a part of my life. And I really do think that there's a way to do movement work, right, that you can still have a full family. You can still be joyful. And I think it's important to really model that. And my kid, he's young. He's 1.5 years old. His name is Isaiah. Yes, good old First Testament biblical name. Yeah, strong name. And he's amazing. Actually, before I came to the Human Rights Campaign, I was at Planned Parenthood for like 13 years. I see, shout out Planned Parenthood. What's up, y'all? It's so clear to me that even the idea of building the family of my dreams the way I'm able to with my wife, it just wasn't possible a generation ago. I watched, did anybody watch, what was that show with Abby Jacobson? A League of Their Own. Did anybody watch that? So there's this scene. I don't think it's a spoiler, so I'm just going to go with it. It's good. Okay, right. There's like a statute of limitations on that, right? So there's this scene where, I think her name's Greta, the tall, where Greta, who's one of the main characters, says to Abby Jacobson, who has a different name in the show, but you just roll with me on this. She says, like, look, and she's basically saying, like, I'm a lesbian, but I want to have kids, but I know that that's not possible. And she kind of laughs it off. And when I was watching that, I was like, wow, this is taking place like just a generation before me. And now the fact that I love a woman, that I'm married to a woman, is no barrier to our ability to have a family and not laugh it off. It's our reality. And that wouldn't be possible without some of the work that folks have done in the reproductive freedom movement to get us to, reproductive health technologies to make it possible. The way that we were able to carry is that we did reciprocal IVF. So I carried my wife's egg. So there was this kind of beautiful process where we got to build the family in the way that we wanted to. And we also got to bring our family into the conversation in a way where they could truly understand and see in the way that we needed them to, that this child was 100% both of ours, right? That was important for our story that we were trying to tell, especially for her as a first generation kid, especially for me as a Black, woman who's coming fully and wholly into celebrating my identity, not only as a Black queer woman, but as a mom and a mother. It was really important. So I just think that this moment is so special because we're literally living in a time where more is possible than people could have ever imagined before. And not only that, the stuff that we're experiencing today was laughable a generation ago. It was so far outside of the worldview. And if that's our case now, I just get so excited about what might be possible a generation from now when we think about what it means to build lives that are wholly ours, especially as queer folks.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, like so many of the questions I wrote beforehand and then that are just bubbling up.
Just flow with it,
I
precious.
know, it's
Yeah.
going so well. One of the things, so in preparing, I did touch base with a lot of my team members here. And one of the things that's really beautiful about working in this space is the majority of our team is made up of queer Gen Z women.
Yes.
Very fully present, fully in the totality of themselves. Yes. Their womanhood, their queerness, their youthfulness, their what the hell have y'all been doing all these years? Why do we have to now fix itness of it all?
Yes.
Which, that's an interesting conversation on some things. You're like, okay. But one of the things that came up in those conversations was this idea that for so long, many of the spaces and organizations that profess to speak on behalf of of the community were led by people who really didn't reflect and or see the whole community.
Yeah. Come on.
And so your role, you're stepping into this position, Imani, you stepping into this position really demonstrates a shift, like fundamental at the DNA level. But the question still remains, what do we do, these organizations, as you as a leader, to make sure that space is created and the visibility of all of the queer community is lifted?
Absolutely. Whew, that is a question and a word all at the same time.
It's all about the testimony from
right?
the Baptist church kid.
Come on now. That's such a thoughtful question. And I also want to say like a provocation, right? Just like when we say that allyship isn't a noun, it's a verb. When we talk about what it means to shift institutions and organizations to center people who are at the margins, who have been historically pushed out, it's a verb. You got to do that every single day. And you got to demand that we prove who we are who we say we are. And I do think that there's been massive change. Like having Imani at NCLR, that's a BFD, right? You got Stacey Stevenson at Family Equality. You got Melanie Willingham Jagger at GLSEN. You got David Johns at the National Black Justice Coalition. Kiara Johnson at the Task Force. These are Black folks that are leading major institutions in the LGBTQ plus space, which matters. But at the same time, I am clear-eyed and aware. Like, I understand the assignment. I am operating in a large nonprofit institution that sits on really a foundation of capitalism and white supremacy in the United States, right? Like, we're clear about that. And in a lot of ways, as Audre Lorde said, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Okay, we need a moment. We need a moment. Continue.
I'll say it again, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. But at the same time, there are ways for us to leverage these institutions to affect change in the ways that we can, and for us to play different roles in the movement to get to the outcomes that we need. I learned so much of this being within Planned Parenthood, right? An organization that, again, has historically, centered the experiences of white women. And the charge in that organization was to come in and think about how you restructure the DNA, the soul of it, the values of it from the inside, doing work around equity, doing work around racial justice and reproductive justice, so that the work on the outside could then be transformed, right? And I saw what that looked like in practice at a place like Planned Parenthood that has also really changed under the leadership of Alexis McGill Johnson, an incredible Black woman that leads that organization. And I think the goal at HRC is to do much of the same. But the interesting thing for me is when I came, because I was expecting like, all right, here we go. I got to put on my armor as we go in here. But when I actually got inside the door, I found folks of color that had imagination and creativity that was unparalleled. I found trans folks who had innovated and created programs unlike anything I had ever seen before. I found young people, young leaders who had come into the door of this organization believing that it would change in spite of itself and stayed there. And I think that HRC is one of those places where we have so many incredible tools with inside the institution and really incredible leaders who have come and committed to it. The task is how we unburden ourselves from the history of the organization in a way where we can be transformational moving forward. And I truly believe that is a leadership challenge, right? So when I came in, I've said it from day one, I am truly committed to making sure that the work that we do at HRC is reflective of building a community that's focused on equity and liberation for every member of the LGBTQ plus community without exception, full stop and period. And I will hold people account to pushing that every single day. And we're going to do it. And I also believe, I'm a softie, totally a softie. And I think that the best thing that I've encountered being at HRC is that I am foolish enough to believe that transformation is possible. You know what I'm saying? And then I act like it every day. And I think sometimes we need some of that reckless imagination, right? We need to free ourselves of being so afraid and step into a framework of abundance, right? A framework of joy. And I think when you organize like that and you lead like that, we can liberate ourselves too in the process.
Okay, wow. No, because I was going to ask one thing, and then you just closed with talking about joy, and I really want to drill down on that because as I was reading some of your interviews, you always come back to joy, to queer joy. And this past weekend, we just had the Black Joy Parade. A little rain happened, but the weekend was bomb. So, but one of the things that really is striking to me is, as you show up, you are right there. You are the intersection of experiences that so many across the country are attacking, are using as a political tool. And if you were to be like, oh, this is, effed up, I'm so tired, it would be perfectly reasonable. But instead, your response is joy. How do you do that? Because sometimes, you just read these headlines and the stories, and Joe was talking about some of the colleagues who write the stories after we hear of one of our trans siblings passing away and how hard that is. How do you find joy or center joy and focus and create and expand that joy?
That's a really good question.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I know. I'm like, should we poll the audience? I don't know. I don't know. For me, I do feel like a lot of what our opposition is trying to do is to lean into a narrative of fear to push us into hiding. And I think especially during the Trump years, you saw so much of that. And I came into understanding organizing in the Obama years, right? Where the framework was like hope, change, possibility, posters and buttons, And to see how stark of a contrast that was with the Trump years, that really did ground themselves in fear and in scarcity. And the only way for you to survive is to take from others, as though, freedom and liberation is some sort of pie and there are only 8 slices to be had, right? So I think that part of the way that I resist is to lean into joy. And I also I do come to organizing and movement building from a deep, faith-based kind of framework. And there's a passage, and oh Lord, I done had a glass and a half of wine, so I might done get it wrong. But it's something like, and for me this resonates, but it might not for all, but I think the sentiment is true, that the Lord giveth a peace that no one else can take away. He provides a joy that no one else can take away. And even if you don't ground your faith in something supernatural, I do think that many of us ground our faith in each other, right? That I can link arms with my community in a way that we can find a peace that someone can't steal from us. That we can link arms and find a joy that somebody can't steal from us. We can link arms and find an abundance that no one can take away from us. And, the other thing that HRC, I think, gets a lot of feedback on, I use feedback to critique, I'll just say it, is our dinner program. Like, we've got, these dinners that we do in communities across the country. But why I think that they're really special is because they're a moment in time where we come together, and still we know in so many communities, especially in the South and the Midwest, right? Like, you still actually don't have the ability as queer people, especially queer folks of color, trans folks of color, to come together, to get dressed up, to be celebrated, to be fancy, to be yourself, to love on whoever you want to love on without feeling afraid. And I think the dinners give us an opportunity to do that. But even more importantly, I think it gives you a night to feel powerful. And my goal is that feeling that you have at one of our dinners, right? You feel it and you can remember it in your muscle memory. So then when you go to lobby the next day, you can remember how powerful you are, right? When you go to rally the next day, you can remember how powerful that you are. And what they're trying to do, because we have such a muscle memory, I think, around trauma in our communities, around grief in our communities, that you forget that we have a muscle memory around unrelenting joy, right, too. And I think we have to reconnect with that as an act of our resilience.
Yeah. I keep on saying, preach. Oh, wow. This is just so fascinating to me, because another team member, when I asked what the idea of queer joy meant for her, said it meant safety. And so to hear you basically say that, I'm like, she is seen under your leadership, which is really powerful, because I think many of us have those experiences of not feeling seen, whether, I know when I first moved out here to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, coming from Atlanta, where everybody was black, to walking around being like, oh my gosh, a mirror, there's a black person, it's me. And just being like, this is different.
Right.
But I think everyone in this room, particularly because you're drawn to this conversation, has that experience of not being seen as who you fully are, the richness of all of you. So to hear you say that is the embodiment of joy and strength is just really something to be really grateful for. So again, because the modern world of research involves Instagram, and as I was, delving, and I told you about watching the video and being so excited, and hearing you talk about Sankofa as we transition into Women's History Month, one thing that popped up that was really strange. They've overloaded it with ads now, and normally they're really annoying. Like, clearly, Instagram thinks I want to be a life coach who goes to the bar method 5 times a week, and it's like, and she wants to get some laser work done. But on this particular evening, something that came up was an ad for a conference for Black women. And their theme, I want to make sure I get it right, because I was like, oh, snap, I might have to go to this, was, okay, the soft life for Black women. And so I was thinking about that because there's a artist collective in Oakland called House Full of Black Women, and a few years ago, before COVID, they had a practice where they literally took over a house, filled all the rooms with beds, top tier, super luxe sheets and comforters and beautiful, and they were taking care of Black women because we don't get rest. We are often, and you mentioned this earlier, so focused, and it's so necessary for us to take care of so many people that we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So my question in that roundabout way is, how are you taking care of yourself? What is your sisterhood circle, and how are they helping you take care of yourself?
That so much resonates with me. A couple weeks ago, my aunt, another one of my aunts, my dad's sister, she passed away suddenly. She was 70 years old, and for me, like 70 is not
For both of us, that's nothing. That's like the
right.
new 40.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Seriously.
Yeah, she had a sudden heart attack and passed, and I was we were at her homegoing celebration earlier this week on Monday actually, and I was talking to one of my cousins, and he's like, we've got the one aunt that lived, our great aunt who lived to 102, but then my grandmother passed at 65. My mom's older sister passed at 67. My dad's sister passed at 70, and we just lost one of my uncles who was 68, something like that. And it just got me to thinking about the ways Black folks, but especially Black women, are shouldering so much, and what is the cost? And I think I've also been wrestling with these ideas of mortality a lot too, especially as I look at kind of my immediate lineage line, unfortunately experiencing earlier deaths and asking myself why. And for all of the women that I mentioned, my grandmother, my mom's eldest sister, and this aunt that passed, they were the matriarchs in their era. So it is really sitting with me as an urgent thing to consider. What does it mean for us to fight, right? To hold so much, but also to live. So for me, I really do, like, it's something that's really on my mind right now. And I also, I take rest seriously. I do. I believe in vacation, which has been like a shock to my team. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm gone. No, you don't understand.
Right.
I'm gone. You should consider me to be in Antarctica this week because I am gone.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and then I also believe that you've got to find ways to restore. Like, my time with my kid is precious and it is sacred to me. And I believe that by giving him 100%, when I've got those hours and that time with him, it's not only to pour love into him, but it's also to restore myself and fill up my cup. And I really do think, especially those of us that are holding so much, those of us that are living at the margins and forced to be futurist in a lot of ways, we got to be thinking about how we restore ourselves enough so that we're not pouring from an empty cup. And for me, it's a practice. I don't know that I've gotten it right. I might go to your Soft Life conference with you. You know what I mean?
It's in Hayward. We can go together.
Yeah. Is that in Arkansas?
No.
Oh, gee,
Then
the
we won't
shade
be
of it all.
going.
Dang.
No, it's in the East Bay.
Oh, okay.
The sunnier side. Okay, well, I'm so glad to hear that because too often we are in positions, or not even in these high-level positions, but just you look at so many Black families or, growing up in the Black church. Yeah. There's a minister, Reverend Doctor, the Most Holy High Bishop, John.
That's him.
Whatever. I'm from Atlanta, so we have Creflo Dollar. He had an ATM in the church, and it was like, that's not godly. But
that's not godly.
But the real work my grandfather was a Baptist minister, and he would talk about, when they were trying to pay off the mortgage, he was like, our kitchen mechanics went to work.
Yeah.
And he was like, we would not have been able to pay this off in record time but for
Yes.
these Black women busting those amazing biscuits and other meals.
Yeah.
And so often, it's almost like it's a new concept, this idea of, no. It's not just a cute little phrase, don't pour from an empty cup. It's like, no, it is mandatory that you do that. So it's powerful that you're like, no, I'm in Antarctica. You don't need to know where I'm actually at, but just think Antarctica.
Yeah. Right. And no shade to Antarctica. I'm sure they have great Wi-Fi, but I just never been. Yeah. And I also wonder what elements of it are privilege that we have now that previous generations just didn't have. Like my dad, he worked in grocery stores for my whole life, like 30 years. And, he actually would work overnights at the grocery store so that he could be with me during the day and, like, take naps when I was at school, right? Like,
Are you an only child?
grinded like that. It's kind of complicated about how that works.
It's a blend.
It's a blend. It's a blend. I'm the only child of my mother and father, but then I grew up in a blended household. Okay. But he always said that, like, the reason that he grinded and worked as hard as he did was so that I didn't have to think about work as only a means of survival. I could think about something that I could do that would be fulfilling and the best use of whatever talents God had given me. And what a privilege that is, right? And I only have that privilege because he worked the way that he did so that I could be able to do that. So I do think that also part of my honoring my ancestors and the generations before me is to embrace two things. One, that the way I approach my occupation is based on how I can be of use and of service. I do think of this as a role of service in a lot of ways. I'm honored and privileged to get to do. And then two, that I embrace what my ancestors sacrificed and prioritize joy. And I think by doing that, it really is honoring all that have come before me. It is that spirit of Sankofa in a lot of ways.
That was one of the questions, but thank you so much for asking.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so talk a little bit about how your family has reacted to you now being this historic figure at HRC. Like, is mom excited? She's ready to put on her fancy dress?
Oh my goodness, they are so over the moon excited. At first they were like, what? Like, tell me more. Just because I think and this is like when I first got involved in organizing, they were like, so that means that you're working on people's closets. That's really great. We're so proud of you because your room was a mess as a kid. We're glad that you have this. And I was like, no, like organizing people power into change making. And they're like, that's a job. And then they heard I had a 401k and they said, we're so proud of you. We're so proud, So I think for them, like, they just never, and I think my family is very committed to service. Like, my dad worked in the grocery stores for 30 years, but he was also really active in his union, My mom, like, she did data management work and was a bodybuilder. That's a whole side story, but
oh my gosh,
we're
talking about that next.
I know, that's
a
whole side story. But then she was, like, super active in the church. Like, she always believed that, service is what you do in your community. And she always said, church isn't a place that you go, it's a place that you serve, right? And I kind of think that service orientation really stuck with them. So as they came to understand that, like, oh, wow, the way that I do service can also be a sustaining career, they've been so proud. And then to get to see the Human Rights Campaign, oh, my goodness. You would think that I was Beyonce Knowles Carter, okay? They are so proud of me. But even more so than being proud of me, every time they come to a dinner or come to an event like this, they're proud of all of us, right? Because they lived in that generation where if somebody had AIDS, they pushed them to the side. Two of my aunts and uncles had AIDS, and our family didn't know how to wrestle with it, right? They lived in that generation where you knew that somebody was gay or that they were queer, and you tried to kind of love them in spite of it instead of celebrating them for who they were. So the fact that we can be in these places, that we can be out loud, that we can be joyful and we can be celebrated, to them that shows that truly, truly anything is possible, right?
Yeah.
And they're so proud to be a part of that.
Okay, I'm just in awe because, earlier you talked about as a Black woman, you have no choice but to be future focused, but you grew up in a house where everyone was future focused because, we know in the community there's often, some challenges around seeing and celebrating the fullness of one another. So that's just incredible to hear that your parents figured it out and got it together. Like, thank you to them.
They're awesome. I love Mama and Daddy.
Yeah.
I do. I really do.
Seriously.
They are so great. And, I also think, the interesting thing for me in my Black experience, and some people, people have very different experiences than mine, but both in the Black church and in my very Black-ass family, they're very Black, like, it is deep.
Chicago.
We play spades.
Yeah.
We do the dozens. Like, it's deep. But, and yeah, we're from
Do
Chicago.
y'all run Bostons in your spades
Yes,
games?
of course.
How's
Come
the
on now.
trash talk? Because the trash talk is what really matters.
Exactly.
Where
It
you're
goes
like,
hard.
You
It
can't
goes
come
hard.
You can't come timid because your cousin will eat you alive.
It's an art. It's an art
It
form.
really is. We do violence to show love.
We do, exactly. Yeah. Always. In all ways. But the interesting thing is that when it came to sexuality and gender orientation, like, it just wasn't the pain point. Because when I think about the Black communities that I grew up in, the issues that we were facing were so deep that these pieces around identity didn't permeate in the way that other people experienced, right? Like, we were thinking about, what is it going to look like to not get discriminated against at work and be fired for being Black, right? What does it look like to actually not to have an environment in Chicago where young Black men don't have to move to stay with our family in Iowa because joining a gang wasn't about you making a decision. It was about what block you lived on, right? You would be enlisted, right? We were dealing with, trying to fight violence in the community, making it home from school alive. We were dealing with real assaults on our health and our lives every day. So the fact that I was queer, they're like, but you're alive. You're in school. You're healthy. You're happy. That is a good thing. You're getting to be your full self. So the way that I came up, I really feel like my dream and my hope, my coming out was the most uneventful thing on earth. I was quite disappointed by it myself.
Share. Please share.
Well, I came home ready. I was like, okay, I'm going to be
How
sweating.
old were you?
I was like in college, and I was like, you know what? I really am feeling for this chick. I'm gonna bring her home to meet my parents, and I'm just gonna set it up so they gotta deal with it,
The confrontation.
It's gonna be what it is. I'm gonna drive because I went to school in Missouri. I'm gonna drive to Chicago, not take the bus. I'm gonna drive so that way, if it goes south, we're just gonna stay in the car. We ain't gonna deal with that. And I called my mom when I was like an hour away from home, and I said, "Mom, I'm coming home. And I'm bringing my girlfriend." And she said, "Your friend?" And I said, "No, my girlfriend." And she said, "Come on, bring your little friend." And I said, "She doesn't get it." And then I get to the house, I come in, and she goes, "You love my baby." And she like hugged my and it just wasn't a thing. And I know like that is so unrealistic for so many people. But I do hope that one day we get to a world where coming out for everyone feels uneventful, right? Because you can just be who you are and people will love you and love the person you're bringing home because they love you too. And that was and I was so nervous and so afraid. And that just showed me how abundant love can be. Even if you don't understand everything, you could love someone simply for the fact that they loved me too. It didn't work out with her, but she still, That was actually the harder part when I was like, I broke up with so-and-so. And she goes, "Baby, should I call her?"
Oh, no, did
Yeah,
she
that
and your
was
mom get
harder.
along really well?
Yes.
Oh no, did your mother judge you after? Did she ask what you did wrong?
I didn't even go into it. I was
Okay.
like, you know what? I'll be back next week.
Okay, I have so many questions, but I want to make sure we also include the audience. So, um, before we pivot, who are, I'm presuming your parents are amongst this list, but who are your heroes?
Oh yeah, my parents for sure. My great aunt, like I said, she was a matriarch of our family for so long, and I think taught me a lot about what it means to survive and just being 102 and going from a place of like um, not having indoor plumbing, right? To listening to me complain about the Wi-Fi being slow. Like what an evolution of your life, right? And then I also think one of the kind of historical figures that really is inspiring to me is Harold Washington.
Yeah.
He was, excuse me, the first black mayor of Chicago. And I've listened to some of his political debates that he had with one of the Daly brothers that he was running against.
There's so many.
Yeah, I know,
Dailies,
totally. I'm like, I can't remember which one. But yeah, the Dailies are an institution in Chicago politics. And he would read them for filth in the debates. And this was in the 80s. And it was just so cool to watch somebody who could be authentically black and use the skills that we developed around the Thanksgiving table and playing spades to be effective politically. That was so cool. And then he also said that when I become mayor, I'm going to be fairer than fair. And that idea that even though I have been a marginalized person, I have been oppressed in every single way by the politics of Chicago, when I win, and he would say this, when I win, I'm not going to take that out in revenge on white people. Instead, I am going to be fairer than fair. I am going to center justice in everything that I do. And I thought that was so cool. I had a pastor that once asked the question, or once said, someone asked her, excuse me, they asked her, why do you think people, meaning the extremists that we see in politics all the time now, are so afraid of us being folks of color, women, trans folks, non-binary folks? And she said they're afraid because they see the way that the country is going. They're afraid that when we are in power, we will treat them as terribly as they've treated us. And I thought that was so provocative to me. And I think what a gracefulness we have to think of how we are going to be fairer than fair in the midst of everything that we've gone through.
Yes. Whew. Okay, everyone. So I don't know about y'all, but that was a word. Mic drop, choose whatever phrase works for you. Thank you so much, Kelley. I, initially was going to ask, what are the issues you're going to focus on, and what do you think about this and that? I know, but I think what's so great about, certainly the Manny space, but this particular moment, those answers will come. I mean, they're already here. If people don't know, they just go to the website, hrc.org, and they see the work that's being done. Or they follow the Instagram, which is Kelley J. Robinson or Human Rights Campaign. I know I really went down. It was a wormhole.
Yes,
it was
thank you, Precious.
a massive wormhole. But it was so good, and they will see the answers to those questions. And so the night just going organically was really, to my mind, best served just talking. And I don't really try to bring DeSantis or any of that up in conversation. It just turns the tummy. So I would rather talk about shoes. So with that, everyone, Angelina, our mighty, mighty events manager, is the queen of the mic. It is a wireless mic. She has legs. She's going to meet you. She will hold the mic. You will have 60 seconds because we want to get a lot of questions out. And isn't she cute? She's so lovely.
Hey.
So please raise your hand. I will call on you. Angelina will run as fast as she can, and we are going to have a good conversation. Who wants to kick us off? Yes, the Reverend Doctor.
Yeah. All right, so how do you keep your faith in a world where people lie and say that queer people aren't God's favorite?
They lying. They are. And I think part of it is about um, knowing who we are. My dad, he used to always say this to me over and over and over again. He'd say, "What's your name?" And I'd say, "My name's Kelley." And he'd say, "We know who you are." And as a little kid, I thought it was so silly. And I was like, we have to go, old man. Come on now. Um, but I say it to my kid all the time now, too, because there's a piece about reinforcing that you know who you are more than anyone else. So no matter what you hear outside in the world, you know who you are. You know whose you are. And I think that there's got to be a way for us to reinforce that with one another. I truly am like a faith based person in the way that I approach the world. And I do believe that a big part of my faith is a faith that I find in other people that love me and care about me enough, that love us and care about us enough to believe that the world can change. And I think in this moment, we truly need community in a way that is unparalleled. We need the beloved community that Dr. King talked about. We also need a revolutionary community that's going to care about each other in the midst of a world where the government isn't going to give us the care that we've been promised, right? In the midst of a world that's attacking us and trying to pull us apart. So I think that this is a really important moment for us as individuals to figure out what are the mentorship things that we can do? What are the ways that we can connect one-on-one with people that need to hear that you are valid and you are enough just as you are? And what are the ways that we need to be thinking about the ways that community can be revolutionary together, both in terms of direct service and broader political power? And I just think that this is one of those kind of turning point moments for us as a community, as a nation, and as a world, where we can do that in a way that can transform us for future generations.
The gentleman here with the tie. Sharp suit. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thank you. Hi, Kelley. We talked a little bit about this earlier. I guess my question is, and I'm going to get a little political, right? So I'm from Florida, and I'm a proud Floridian, right? We've talked about this. And I guess my question is about standing and fighting. So I grew up in a generation where I was an advocate, an activist for marriage equality, right? And then a generation where under the Obama administration, we saw health care, Affordable Care Act. We saw marriage equality happen. We saw coming out of Afghanistan under Joe Biden. And we saw what happened after 20 years in a country. They went back to what they were before. How do we explain to young children in Florida, trans girls, trans boys, LGBT students, who saw their uncles, their brothers, their fathers get married? They saw such progress to now not being able to go backward. How do we do that? So I guess the question is, how do we stand and fight? And in Florida in general, but how do we provide that support and give them that support when so much of what they're seeing is backwards?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that we don't sugarcoat the reality. Especially after the 2022 elections, it's true. It wasn't as terrible as we all thought. And I think in a lot of ways that felt victorious for some of us. But then when you look at the experiences of folks in rural Mississippi, you look at the experience of kids in Florida, you look at the experience of couples in the Midwest, it's still a dangerous place. And I think we shouldn't shield people from that. We should call it what it is and name it. There are two other things that I think we should do. One, I think the arc of history is long and it does bend towards justice, but it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we force it, we pull it, and we push it to do so. And when I look at the longer arc of history, we are making progress. This year we passed the Respect for Marriage Act, right? And that was in the same chamber that 20 years ago was voting to ban marriage. That's 20 years. No other issue has seen that sort of unparalleled progress and national change of sentiment in 20 years. And I'm not saying that that makes it right for everyone, but I do think that when you zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see that on the broader lines, we are making big scale change. Um, and I also think that, what Barack Obama said back in the day, I'm a Barack Obama stan, the nature of change is that it zigs and it zags. And we're in one of those points where we have made monumental progress and they are trying to pull us back out of fear. And we have to understand it for what it is and also think about power in broad context of how are we going to make change anyway? How are we going to figure out the next path forward that might actually give us a leap ahead for a generation? If there's one thing I think about, the last couple of months, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm sorry. I felt myself meandering because I had a lot of thoughts and ideas. But how do I get to it quickly? Okay. So the Dobbs moment. I was at Planned Parenthood when Dobbs fell. And I think for me, the lesson that I took away from that is that we can't spend so long protecting a status quo that does not serve everyone, right? We have to not be afraid to do things that are bold and transformative and to do them now, even if they feel outside of the realm of possibility. And it's that beacon and that light that will tell people that we believe that safety and joy and abundance is accessible to you, and we're going to fight for it no matter what and without exception. And I think we need to do more of that to let people know that even though it's dark today, we're not giving up and we're not leaving you behind and we're not moving out of our state. We're going to stay here and we are going to fight. And the last thing I just want to say is that I think as progressives, we got to get a little bit more comfortable living in the duality of the world, right? Last year, I came in touch with this term called simultaneity. Now, I heard it in a training, so it might not be a real word. It might be made up. I don't know, but I liked it. And this trainer described it as the idea that you can feel two complex, even conflicting feelings in the same moment, in the same breath, right? Like you can feel both joy and grief. You can feel hope and you can feel despair. You can feel victorious and you can feel a little bit defeated all at once. And I think sometimes we try to make it seem like we're happy today and sad tomorrow, when the reality that most of us experience, you're experiencing all of these emotions at the same time, and that's okay. But the challenge is even in the dark moments, even the moments where you are feeling hopeless, to still choose hope, right? Even the moments where you're feeling darkness, to still choose light. And I think that by doing that, we start to build a muscle of understanding that life is complex and there are moments of darkness, but still we can fight ahead. So I'm curious about how we can get more in a mode of living in that duality and training ourselves to fight ahead anyway.
Okay. A question over here.
I'm getting my steps in.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Hi. I love LGBT activists that talk about joy. And one of the things is I'm really joyful because I've been working on getting LGBT activists out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And I got a trans activist out last week.
Yeah.
And we got a queer man out last night. And I have actually one of my friends who's an Afghan refugee here. Yeah, Elias, just raise your hand. And my friend Andre, who's from Ukraine and a Ukrainian gay activist who walked across the border to get to safety here. So meet them, everyone. They need help. But here's the thing I really want to say. The United States has been the leader in pushing freedom for LGBT people. And we really need to do that with the Biden administration and to really be able to bring people like this sometimes here, but also provide freedom in wherever they are. talk to me about freedom, because freedom and joy go together.
Yes, yes. I think you said all that had to be said. Yes. No, and I do think that our leadership on the global stage is something that's critically important. And I have to say, I think during the Trump years, we lost so much of that. And one of the things I am inspired by is this Biden administration making an example of what it is that we stand for and what we commit to here in the United States, and also what we expect from other leaders globally in a way that's powerful and meaningful. Um, and I do think 100% that freedom and joy go hand in hand, right? To me, power is about the ability to be able to decide for yourself, the ability to be able to access freedom, which is what unlocks that joyful side of it. So I'm excited to be somebody that prioritizes those things, but also to center ourselves and what it really means to fight for a global space where our people can experience freedom and joy. And I think we also have to be very clear that the attacks that we're seeing in the United States around gender and education is a foundation for how global strongmen arise to power. It's a foundation for authoritarianism. So let us not also be naive that we are excellent here in the United States. We have to get our shit together and understand that we're actually part of this global context. I'm really so appreciative for the work that you've done and for the heroic ways that you two have led particularly. So thank you so much for being here.
And before we go to the next question, this is going to be a shameless plug, so prepare. But on March 23rd, we actually are going to have what I believe will be an incredible conversation, the title of which is Refugees in the Bay Area, Welcoming Our Neighbors. And we have panelists from HAIS, JCRC East Bay, which has focused its resettlement efforts on the LGBTQ community seeking asylum and refuge. And Myrna Melgar, the supervisor, will be the moderator. So please make sure you join us for that, because it is such a powerful piece of this conversation. Thank you so much for your work. All right. There is a fabulous woman who is doing a color block story that everyone can learn from. She had her hand up. I saw the green pants, y'all. The green pants, the blue jacket. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And she's from Alabama, so that is a huge compliment for me from
thank you.
Atlanta.
I was just about to say that. Thank you so much for my plug-in. Being an African-American trans woman from the South, me and you share similarities when it comes down to family acceptance. I am aware that not every girl, not every woman that is a trans experienced that. But moreover, I'm more concerned about my community. Being a trans leader here in San Francisco is very, 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 I hold that very dear. Anything that I touch, I'm serious with it. I'm about like you. If I don't feel like I'm going to be serious with it, then I'm not going to touch it. But my more concern about my community back in the South, I'm always struggling to find resources for them as much as they can do in the South. How do you give back to your community back in your hometown?
I gotta be honest, I gotta do better in spending more time in Chicago. And when I went home, I think it was really, because I was just home this week on Monday, it was really clear to me that I felt like I had become untethered from where I grew up. And it happened without my conscious awareness. Like, I've been a creature of DC for the last 15 years. And when I came home and I walked my neighborhood streets, right? And the place that I used to like get my pickle with the candy cane in it, some of y'all don't know about that life. But it wasn't there anymore. And it wasn't just not there. It had been gentrified, and there were people in shorts in the wintertime running. And I was like, whoa, this has changed. And I think for me, I think I got that reminder recently that you can't forget where you're from. And staying tethered to the places that we belong is actually an essential part of the movement work. So one of the things I've just been thinking about recently is one for my kid, like how we go back and spend more time in Chicago, not just with the family, but in the community, right? And then two, how I make sure that the issues that are present in Chicago, I use as a framework and template to what we do nationally. Because in Chicago, one of the issues that's really present for me is gun violence prevention. My wife works at Everytown for gun safety. And there was a moment at the end, I think it was the end of last year, where, no. It was around Half Moon Bay, where that week here we had two mass shootings attacking the AA and HPI community. And that same week in Chicago, there was another mass shooting that wasn't as reported on, where 5 trans Black women were attacked. So I'm only saying that I think it is a practice I've been reminded that I have to stay tethered to in a meaningful way, and understand that by wrestling with some of the challenges of the places where I grew up and spending more time there, invest in the community, to actually unlock something bigger, a template for reform and for change that can sustain us in other places too, not only nationally, but in places like other areas of the Midwest and the South that experience some of the same trials and tribulations. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we have time for one more question. Okay, 3 hands just went up. Can you do a speed round? Are you comfortable
Yeah,
with
let's do a
that?
speed round. We'll take all the questions.
All right, everyone show Angelina ample grace. She's going to work the room.
Okay, first
Here,
one.
there,
One-
here,
one at a time. One at a time.
one at a time.
My memory's okay, but not
and
that
please abbreviate if you can so we can get all 3 in.
Awesome. Kelley, you came here, I think your first week on the job. You had our dinner, and welcome back. We so glad to have you. I think about looking forward. You're going to be hopefully back in October at our dinner again.
You better use this opportunity to make a public ass.
Yes.
Kelly.
Well, I guess so then.
Yeah. So I
That
would
was
love,
good.
and
That
we
was
have
like
our steering committee retreat this weekend. Would love to hear what you would like to see out of San Francisco when you come back. What would be the ideal success?
Okay, hold.
Okay, question 1. Question 2.
Then we have a brown suede bomber jacket.
Suede, fabulous jacket, not
It is a fabulous jacket.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's leather. It's
Oh,
leather.
It's fine. Thank you both for such a wonderful discussion. My question is on queer political resistance and revolution, and I would love to hear your imagination and vision for how the HRC can mobilize both activists and LGBT youth to take part in direct action to challenge all of these bills that are being proposed and passed, and honor the legacy of resistance that our community has always been a part in.
Yes.
So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
All right, hold. And we have one more hat to the back. Okay. She is on her way. It's going to be a juicy question. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, right. Hello. I wanted to send out some Chicago love as well. I'm from there as well. And I think we graduated around the same time, so we probably know some of the same people. But anyway, my name's Andrew Rayner. My question...
Andrew! Oh my gosh, hi!
Hi. How are you? I wrote down some notes, so I'm trying to get through it quick. My question is kind of broadly, if you could share your thoughts around coalition building, specifically, like, how do you build for the many? And I'm asking that, like, thinking about a macro and a micro thing. Like, one, like, the LGBTQ community has such an opportunity because it is so diverse, and yet there's the challenge in that you are trying to serve all these different types of letters in the wonderful alphabet soup that is us. And so, like, how do you serve the many when you're trying to build coalitions? And then I'm thinking more acutely, right? Like, here in San Francisco, I build community for Black gay men, and, like, not everybody wants the same thing. And so, like, how do you build community even, like, in that more acute and small group, trying to please all, when sometimes people get mad at you when they're not being pleased doing that?
Okay. This is going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want from San Francisco for when you return for the dinner? Everyone get your tickets now. Secondly, your imagination, your vision for political activism and engagement, particularly amongst the younger generations, to like fight this bullshit. And then Andrew, who did have an amazing Black brunch. Like, we bonded over the phone, so this is my first time actually seeing him in person, and we talked about grits, and we agree, and that's all you need to know. So, talking about building diverse communities and then dealing with the community when not everyone in that group agrees.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple things. One, I think it's important to think about the future of our country and where we're going. So, by 1 in 4 of Generation Z are out and openly identifying as a part of the community. 1 in 4.
That's amazing.
By 2030, 1 in 7 of all adults in the United States will identify as a portion of the community, as a part of the community. Huge, huge, huge numbers. So I say that because demographics aren't destiny, but we have to do the work of creating a political path, a way for these people to see themselves as powerful stakeholders in the nation, and we have to start creating that path now and today. So I'm saying that on a few fronts. One, let's double the San Fran dinner. What do you think? Let's do it. Let's do it. We can do it. And if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere, right? Like, I think there's a real opportunity to grow our people power intentionally, equitably, in a way that reflects every member of our community in a really serious and intentional way. So I'm excited about that. The other thing I think is true, my mentors, particularly Alexis from Planned Parenthood, reminded me that, like, you don't get to breakthroughs in the HIV/AIDS epidemic without ACT UP. You don't. You don't get to the Civil Rights Act without walking through Selma. And I think that we are at a critical moment where, to be honest with you, advocacy is not safe because we are challenging institutions of power and white supremacy, which has never been safe. So I think that this is a moment where we should be abundant in our tactics. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing that people don't all want to do the same thing. In fact, our opposition is very attuned to this. They throw out all kinds of wild stuff, right, and just see what sticks. I think we need to be a little bit more, let every flower bloom and follow the ones that are actually kind of yielding and leading us to liberation and equity. Now, I don't think that means to do it recklessly, though, because I think where we can be better than our opposition is focusing really what it looks like to have equity and inclusion in the way that we think about strategy, right? And ensure that if people are doing things on a spectrum of activism, on a spectrum of tactical, of direct action tactics, that's still done in an equitable way. But we should let it bloom and let it blossom and follow the ones that can build the people power where we need. We should be both broad and deep. And I think there's an opportunity to do that with imagination and creativity. Y'all, out here in San Francisco, y'all got some stuff people in the rest of the country ain't never seen before. I mean, y'all could all be holograms for all I know from what I've seen in California. Like, this is some cutting edge type stuff. So we should be using technology. We should be using the ways that people are interacting today. And that's how you get young people engaged. Not being afraid of technology, but embracing it for good, pushing it to do what it can to change and evolve society. And I think there's an opportunity there. And I think the last thing I'll say is, like, we can win. I wholeheartedly believe that we can and we will win. And in this generation, I hope that there's a story that we tell to our kids and to our grandkids or to your nieces and nephews, if that's just not on your path, right? That we were there in the rooms where things were happening. That we committed and we did something and we tried and we fought and we didn't always get it right, but we showed up the next day anyway. And I think having that sort of grit, that sort of innovation, that sort of relentlessness is how we keep people engaged in the fight, not just for today, but in the longer haul. And I'm excited to be a part of that with all of you.
Yes. Okay.
Did I do okay?
That was amazing.
Oh, yay!
Yes. Okay. Wow. Kelley, thank you so much. Can we
Thank
give
you.
a round
This
of
was
applause?
great.
Yes.
Clap for yourself.
Oh
How
my
fun.
gosh. Okay.